you said you gave a very passionate story about what happened to you as a child with the teacher. Before we get to reparations, I just wanted to know what was the end result of that when you
Well,
told your
here's the
mama?
problem. I
Hmm.
was third grade and I didn't know any better.
Okay.
If I would have knew, it took me years later to really reflect on that. And I was like, hold up, that
Hmm.
was she did that out of racism.
Hmm.
Cause she walked off and left. And I'm like, oh, happy go lucky third grader. Cookies.
Hmm.
Now, had I been like in high school or middle school, I was like, hold up, she gave me that because, but I didn't know, so I didn't tell, I didn't remember the teacher's name. I didn't even know who the teacher was. I remember the lunch break and I'm in the cafeteria and she walks up there with a Ziploc bag full of doggy biscuits that look like cookies. And asked me, here, would you like these? I'm thinking she's just being nice, giving the kids.
And I think that's just very, very inhumane. And you, sir, Native American, you spoke on something that I don't think a lot of people know about Mount Rushmore and how disrespectful that is to Native Americans, that they are now just having to look at the faces of those racist and slave owners right there in a place that should be held sacred. Do you think because of that, and I think because Native American people and African American people have so much in common as far as racism and being discriminated against, do you find it more and more important for us to stick together and help one another through everything like
Most
this
definitely. That's why I need
climate?
solidarity.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our paths are connected.
Yeah.
The things that happen, there are atrocities all the way around.
Okay.
And then all it perpetrated by these people, man, and they glorify it. It's not right.
Yeah.
And
I have a
another,
brother right now that's on the Cheyenne Reservation in North Dakota,
Mm-hmm.
and he'll tell you when he drives by Mount Rushmore,
Mm-hmm.
it hurts.
Yeah.
Just like when he walks by this monument,
Mm-hmm.
it hurts.
Yeah.
I don't have to see Mount Rushmore every day.
Right. I
You got to
understand.
see this.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's why I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
This was all bad.
Yeah.
This was, they started taking land from us
Mm-hmm.
from the get-go when they first started colonizing.
Yeah.
You ask this man, how'd you end up with your last name?
well, my granddaddy changed his last name, but it comes from slavery. His last,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it comes from slavery.
Which is something that we live with every day as African American people. And some people, I guess, they just don't know how traumatizing that can be if you really think about it, being stripped of everything: last name, religion, culture, land, everything.
I have a friend
Mm-hmm.
that's from Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
His last name, I'm not going to put his business out there.
Yeah, that's
but
fine.
his last name is not his last name.
Right.
You know why?
Mm-hmm.
Colonialism, apartheid.
Yeah.
The reason he doesn't have his original name is because of all of it. It's because of colonialism. And that's the conversation that needs to be had.
Yeah.
Is there has been a devaluation of people for centuries.
Yes.
There's no level playing field. There
Mm.
never has been. Like I said earlier, back in the day, if we were friends, we were walking down the street together, we were a threat. We both could have been hung for that.
Yeah.
We both could have been shot for that. Just associating with each other.
Mm-hmm.
Think about that.
and still to this day, in certain places in America, if we was probably caught walking down the street, it could happen.
Yeah. Which
So-
leads me to what you were saying. You asked this gentleman about reparations. What do you think about reparations? Because I'm curious, as a Caucasian woman, you said you're in solidarity, so you stand with the Black Lives Matter movement. What do you think about reparations for African American people?
So, saying that I stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement, most people don't know what that means.
Okay.
So that does go back into valuing Black lives.
Okay.
They are unapologetically Black. And I do stand with solidarity with putting funds back into the community, with valuing lives in general, and that should not be a threat to anybody who is white,
Okay.
first and foremost. As far as reparations, I don't think that I'm qualified to say what the Black community is.
Now that's interesting because I hear so many white people expressing to us why we should feel the way we feel, which is actually insulting to Black people and Native American people.
I should probably preface that with that's my husband. by the way.
This is your husband.
This is my white
That's
wife.
that's your white wife, and that's cool. Which probably explains why you're a little bit more sympathetic than
Actually,
that.
that was my experience.
Mhm.
My experience was realizing that I would have been one of the people that was across the street today, and realizing that my husband, because he is white, he's the largest person in this family. Realizing that my husband and my son are First Nations, learning their history, with it being my son's history, right, causes that empathy.
Yeah.
And what I keep hearing is white people saying, "Well, wait, I'm Irish," right? Or I was poor and I never owned anybody. Well, I mean, it's like, what do you want, a cookie? Like,
Yeah.
but I think that the idea of whiteness is more important of a discussion than race,
Okay.
because first of all, whiteness is a very fragile thing for white people, and they don't want to talk about that. Whiteness has nothing to do with your race, because what's the first thing that somebody says whenever you're well spoken? You talk white, right? You know what was the suffix on my whiteness? Trash. Because I was poor, because I didn't speak well, because I didn't have any education. I didn't get educated past the 6th grade in public school. So the idea of white supremacy was so fragile. They didn't want anything to do with me either. But that does not mean that I can say I understand.
Absolutely.
Today, one day of white people showing their ass to me clarified that I have no clue what it means to be black and American.
And you know,
There's no way I can know what it means.
and
to
you
be
know
black.
something, that we're on the subject
Thank
of
you.
color. It causes prejudice amongst our own people.
It
like
does.
in my people, I can speak for me, that if you're lighter than the rest of your family, they look down on you.
Oh yeah.
And what they would call us is a white face.
Okay.
Because my skin is a lot lighter than the rest of my family.
Yes. And I must admit, I would not have guessed that you were Native American just by looking at you, and that's why I don't judge a book by its cover, because you never know.
And then here's another thing, I don't know if you're up on that. There were a lot of Native Americans that was classified as Negroes.
Because of their dark
If you
complexion.
They
look
look
back
just
through
like
the
me.
census,
Yeah.
And
they
a lot of
called us
people,
mulattoes.
Yeah.
They called us Negroes.
but they had some,
I
like
understand.
some of the first ones was a book called American, written by John Oglesby. He was a cartographer. And if you look at it, you can Google it up. You look at the pictures, and it shows like a very lot of the original indigenous people of America, North America, was brown skinned, dark skinned people.
Well, I appreciate you all for taking a little bit of time talking to me and giving us some history that some people may not have known. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
All right, no problem.